Okay, guys, here it is, the wrap-up video from Mosconi Cup, my 5 takeaways, and then some footage from the opportunity that we had to speak with Jeremy Jones after the event yesterday, right after the press conference with Europe. So I'm going to jump right in and get this out to you guys. Takeaway number 1, that really sucked. Okay, speaking from the perspective of a US fan, the only thing more difficult to endure than watching that play out is listening to all the comments online today about the players, the coaches, how, hey, 5 guys that live in Fort Walton Beach could beat this team. Come on, guys. Like, let's keep it classy. Let me tell you something. These guys are players just like you and I are in terms of how they think about and handle defeat, how upset they get when they lose. So I want you to think about that. If you're watching the Mosconi Cup, which at this point, it's pretty much just pool players, the hope is that it's going to continue to grow and we bring in more people that aren't just pool players. But right now, it's pool players. So you know what it feels like to have a performance like the United States had. You know how you feel when you do that. The difference is you get in your car and you drive home and nobody's talking about it online for 6 months. Keep in mind, these are real people. I've met some of them, good guys, and they're not happy that they lost. So just try to keep it classy. You hear the same things every year, when we lose. We need a new team. We need a new captain. Should have picked this guy. Should have picked that guy. Some of the things, okay, maybe they're worth considering. Some of the things are just completely absurd. Shane Van Boening shouldn't be on the team, I heard somebody say. Actually, I heard several people say that. He shouldn't be on the team. What? He had the highest AccuStats of the team in the event. He had the worst layouts of anybody in the event, and he nearly faded it in several matches. I mean, the guy really gutted up and he played hard. Now, he didn't always get there, but as a pool player that there's times where you're sitting in your chair and you're just feeling great about the game. And you're like, as soon as I get back to the table, I'm running out and everything looks like a run out. And then you have those tournaments where you're sitting in the chair and you just know every time you come to the table, the layout looks harder and harder. Like each time you come to the table, you're like, this layout's harder than the one before. And you feel like you can never get out. And I think we saw that in Shane, some frustration that the layouts were just really difficult, a lot of really tough situations, and he nearly faded it. So give the guy a break. Let me just say this. I'll go on record as saying this. Shane Van Boening should be on the U.S. team for as long as Shane Van Boening wants to be on the U.S. team or when his talent deteriorates. And that hasn't happened. Okay, so let's just lose that one. Takeaway 2, Jeremy Jones is a class act. Jeremy Jones took the time after each day, even day 2 where they lost 5-0, to meet with myself and several other media types and take on questions, hard questions. And he didn't just give one-word answers. Sitting on this side now, doing these interviews, I've had to really look inside and figure out what is a good question. What can I ask someone that's going to allow them to just naturally elaborate on a response? Because if you ask a bad question in the seat, you can get a one-word answer. Jeremy, so how did you feel your team played today? Bad, right? That didn't happen. We asked some questions of him. Some of the questions I asked weren't great questions, but Jeremy, he just had this natural way of understanding what the question meant and expanding on it and explaining things. And the thing I appreciated the most was his honesty. He was very honest about some difficult topics. And some people would say, well, he complained about the racks. You saw it, okay? He did not accuse anybody of bad racking the United States intentionally. But you have to admit, if you look at the way the racks were breaking, the United States did appear to get the short end of that. And he was just expressing his frustration in that. So I like Jeremy. I think he's great for the U.S. team. I think he's a great coach. He's going to bring up the players next year in a normal year where they have time to prepare and get ready. and he's going to have the U.S. ready next year, hopefully, if he stays on, to perform well in this event. Takeaway 3, Europe was the better team. Europe was the better team. They were a team of superstars, and this year really benefited them because rather than taking their qualifiers, they were able to handpick players. And a lot of people said this, they could probably field 2 or 3 5-player teams that could compete with pretty much anybody in the world. But I think what this allowed Alex and Carl to do is find the 5 best players who also would gel and get along really well together. And I think we saw that in the doubles play. And you also saw that when they panned over to look at the sideline there with the European team, they just had this kind of easygoing way about them. They seemed to all get along. They seemed to really like each other. And I think that really helped the team play well this year. In a normal year, the United States would have all of their events leading up. You know, they'd be competing together, they'd be working together, but they'd still need a few roles and they'd still need to really gel as a team. Takeaway 4, losing Justin Bergman really hurt the United States. It really did. We look at it from a couple different perspectives. One is Justin's play. Most people, a lot of people, consider Justin to be the very best player in the United States after the break. Hard to argue that. The guy's an amazing player, an amazing talent. And so losing him a few days before the event, it caused this, really, I think, uneasy feeling in the United States. Taking nothing away from Corey Deuel. Corey's a great player, but anybody being called up in that position a couple days away from the tournament, even if he knew he had a potential of being an alternate, we're dealing with a time where you can't just get out and go play in tournaments and go play in action matches. It's just a different time. And so imagine you sitting at home and Jeremy gives you the call and says, hey, Joey Ryan, we're going to need you to come and be the 5th person on the U.S. Mosconi Cup team. I mean, it'd be amazing, but I'd be scared to death, right? And so then I'd be cramming and hitting balls over the next 4 days to get ready. And I'm sure Corey had that same feeling like, oh man, some doubt. Am I ready? But I don't know if you caught it. Melina Mike posted it yesterday that Corey had just a really cool message about, he didn't perform and, just how he really loved his teammates and things like that. And then Justin Hall comments under and he says, hey, you want to play some or something? And Corey, it's just so cool to see. And this goes back to the human element on these players. Corey responds and says, there's probably going to be a long line waiting to play me. And that humility, I mean, that's one thing. If you ask who won the Mosconi Cup, Europe won the Mosconi Cup. To me, if you ask, who won in terms of human beings and humility, I think the United States did, because there were some things said at the beginning of that event that they just don't sit well with me. And it's not the way I roll. And I thought it didn't look good. Not good optics for Team Europe. One other point about Justin Bergman not being there is I don't know Justin very well, but he kind of strikes me as someone whose their emotions and their temperament is kind of in the middle of maybe a Shane and a Skylar, right? You have Shane who's like dead serious. You have Skylar who's a little bit more playful. And then Justin kind of reminds me of that kind of in between, and I think that would have been really helpful for the United States to have that because, you have Corey who just kind of got thrust into the situation. You had Chris who was brand new, probably trying to feel his way on the team and where he belonged, and then you had Billy and Skylar that were a little more loose and fun and playful. And then you had Shane that was dead serious. I think if Justin's in there, Justin probably plays a pretty big role in helping to keep the team, balanced. And I think that's really important when you're selecting a team. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons, as Jeremy was putting together a team, that he assembled whom he did. Takeaway 5, I said it the other day, I'll say it again. Chris Robinson earned respect. I mentioned that people are posting ridiculous stuff online. One of the things I saw is, I don't care that he played okay. Chris shouldn't have been on the team. I mean, he earned 2 out of the 3 points the United States won. He had one key error, in day one where he overran the 7 to the 8. But I mean, other than that, that guy was solid. He was solid and he played well. And, if you look at him, his fundamentals are really good. And I think that's why he held up under the pressure of the Mosconi Cup. So we need to look for players like that. We need to look for the Chris Robinsons and the Tyler Stiers, those players with that impeccable fundamentals, because we know when the heat is on, if you don't have the fundamentals, that's where you're going to run into problems. And Chris has them. And, I thought it was really cool. Dead Punch just posted this on Instagram. If you look at the post-match press conference, one of the classiest things Europe did all week is Jayson Shaw, unsolicited, came out and said, "Hey, I just want to say this about Chris Robinson. I thought he was going to be, like a liability for them," whatever word he used. He said, "But he played well. He played really well." And when he said that, the whole European team clapped for Chris Robinson. So I'm happy for the kid. I thought he was a good addition to the team, and I'm happy for the future, right? Because, if there's a future that has Chris Robinson, has Tyler Stier coming back, obviously you have Shane, you have Justin, you have Billy and Sky. I mean, we're starting to get this really good collection of players that the coach now can kind of expand a little bit and figure out who's going to be the right personalities to put together so that we can take on this monster of Europe each year and have a really good chance to win. Well, guys, that's my 5 takeaways. So I'm going to turn it over to some footage from the press conference yesterday. It was just a Zoom call with Jeremy Jones and a few folks from Billiards Digest, AZ Billiards, etc. But I'm going to show you the questions that I asked Jeremy Jones, and we'll kind of get his take on it, and then I'll come back to wrap it up. Hey, Jeremy, I know you're fresh off this, and it, I'm sure, stings, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah.
Do you want to continue to do this? Do you want to do this next year?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, I got a family and I do a lot of things in pool, and I love pool, and I got a lot of things I want to do for pool, and the Mosconi Cup's one of them. But after a loss, it's just like automatic. I want to do it again.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how that is. I was pretty lucky in the Mosconi Cup as a player. Usually played pretty darn well. Overall, it was kind of my atmosphere that I thought was good for me. But after we lost that first cup, man, I was very motivated to make the team again. And it's the same situation here. And probably because of the guys, as much as anything. I'm not one to, have the guys lose and say, well, if the players have done this, and then when we win, it's all about me. That's not me. I mean, we're a group. I learned every day from things, and I'm going to go back and evaluate. And hell yeah, I want to be back. And with the good Lord's graces, hopefully that happens.
Hey, Jeremy, we talked to Europe just before this and talked to Jayson, and one of the questions that was posed to him was about the kind of the feud with Shane, that was going on online and in the press conferences. And Jayson alluded to maybe a little bit of gamesmanship and getting in Shane's head. Do you think that occurred? Do you think he was in Shane's head?
Shane, I believe that, like a lot of us, he gets in his own head. Of course he gets eager and builds himself up to want to beat guys, of course, and of course Shaw is one of those matches and one of those players that however long they play each other, he's going to want to pump himself up and beat him every time he can. I didn't talk much to Jayson at all this week because of those comments, because I think it was there's gamesmanship and there's maybe a little bit too much. But I do want to set the record straight a little bit about a comment I made last night in an interview. I brought Jason's name up as far as like he won 3 points and he probably made more mistakes than his opponent, trying to explain how 9-ball pool is. I wasn't trying to call Jayson out as far as like he played bad or something like that. We all saw that, yeah, he made some mistakes, but he also made the greatest shots in the tournament for the most part. And, his record reflected it. So hats off to him for the MVP. He definitely deserved it, along with Europe's win. But to answer your question, yeah, I think, there's certain guys out there for Shane that he addresses differently. And sometimes it pushes him to unbelievable greatness. And then sometimes you can get caught up in it a little bit.
So there you go, guys. Like I said before, Jeremy was so great. He was so accessible. He sat there and fielded tough questions. And, I was happy to have him as the U.S. captain. I'm going to be happy to have him next year if he's back in the helm. I think he's the right choice for the United States. I really think he's going to help build the program. So I hope he stays. And so, guys, I appreciate you following. Do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And we'll keep growing this thing. No real big events on the horizon anytime soon with Derby City getting canceled, but I'd love to do this for other big events that are coming up and kind of give you these updates along with my normal Pool Player Podcast interviews. Hope to have another episode coming out today, Industry Edition, and then we have a really cool episode coming out on Sunday with a lot of great stories, a lot of good gambling stories. You guys are going to love that one. So stay tuned and make sure to subscribe.